Okay, and this community aspect, do you have community managers in your properties? Any of you?
No.
Christoph wants to answer that one.
No. Just I had been to the WeWork premises in New York and met Adam Newman. Was indeed barefoot in front of me in his shorts and a big poster of him on a surfboard behind him, and everyone was. I was the only one with a tie, and I mean, going through these provinces, it was just, I can't see for a long time commercial or companies having these kind of a playground all over. It's nice to have, and we do, for instance, have in Austin, Texas, just acquired the Facebook tower, and next to it is the Google tower. And what do these guys do? They have posters on the windows. Well, we eat meat. You don't. And the others go, why? Why do you eat meat? That's just games, and it's a community. Sure, the Google guys do, the Facebook guys don't, but I think for like a long-term view, it's just you have to be more flexible. You have to have maybe more rooms for the young boys. But do you really need a music room for all of them, or so?
Well, I was not primarily talking about weed and tequila shots. I mean, for me, it was more kind of: do you have someone who helps your tenants to book a place in a restaurant or whatever, provide them with cleaning facilities?
What we definitely can learn, and again, it's what we said earlier, it's about learning. What we can learn is how you treat your employees and how you want your employees, your colleagues, to be part of it. And nowadays, it's really, if you look how the canteens work, how they as you said, the ticketing or whatever is working, I mean, we can learn. It's always a question of financing, of is it worth the cost?
Well, I mean, because we have these experiences in Italy, for example, where it runs pretty well. I mean, we have this tenant experience manager, and the people can call and can mail and get help in things, and that's a complete new kind of part of the business. So it's extending the traditional receptionist, property manager, etc. I mean, do you think about that? Do you have it in place?
Definitely we think about it, but it's always honestly a question of money, of budgets, and
well, currently landlords do not have to kind of do too many efforts to retain their clients. I mean, that might change over time. What's in your opinion?
We have started officially with one of our flagship properties in our portfolio, Trocadero in Paris. We brought in all the services so that we have a real official community manager helping people like with all those services, with cleaning, and if they need anything and you need to make any bookings. So we're getting great response from our tenants to that. So I mean, it's very promising from what we see there. Again, you need to have a building that supports it, that is big enough. So Paris is a good example for that. So for sure, we will continue to use that more in the future. I would say though, tenant services have not started with co-working. As we do take care of our tenants as well, basically, I would expect all my on-site property managers to act as kind of community managers in their buildings, because talking to the tenants, interacting with the tenants, and like once or twice a year we do tenant socials, like ice cream social or something in the wintertime for Christmas season. So interacting with the tenant, engaging with them and taking care of them, again, did not only start with the concierge service, which is a nice thing to have, of course, but sometimes basically those managers, they kind of are community managers, and we get additional services through concierge as well.
But I mean, looking at the kind of the business model of an asset manager, all these new requirements, community, concierge, tenant experience, flexibility, etc. I mean, they're very demanding. They demand kind of some sort of personal involvement as well. I know a KPI that you always try to raise your assets under management with the same amount of people. So does that work in the future, or doesn't it?
It has to. Because, as I said, digitization has a lot to do with transparency, and so our fees and our services are very transparent, and we need to become more efficient. And I think it's fair to do that. In particular, if you see that real estate prices have reached a tremendous level, and the margins are so low that our investors say we don't understand why you make 100 basis points and we only make 200 basis points. So there needs to be a relation. And what we say, digitization has a lot to do with automation, and there are many services you provide nowadays, or the facility manager provides, or the property manager provides, where the tenant and the user just wants to have a fast and efficient service, and he doesn't care for a person at all. They don't care who's fixing the light bulb or who's fixing the elevator. They just want to make sure that it delivers a perfect service 24/7. So we need to reconsider these services, and we need to be personal where our tenants, our clients want us to be personal. And that is, there is a new PwC says return on experience, which is linked to, that's a new KPI linked to real estate. We need to do more, and we own the Facebook headquarter in Seattle, and it is amazing to see what Facebook does to attract people. And if you talk to them, why do you work here? They say, because this is the best building in Seattle, and that's why we have chosen to work for Facebook, because we could have worked for Amazon or for Google or for Microsoft or whatever. So the asset itself needs to do more than just provide space. It needs to be attractive. It needs to combine work and life. It's not you live at home and you work in your office. It's the combination of both. People want to feel home. They want to live while they work, and that's what it's all about. And that is about services. That's about understanding how do you attract people to an asset, and what do you need to procure that they come to the company, that they come to that asset, and that they want to work there. And that is our duty to do that, because otherwise we won't find tenants in a few years. And that starts with connectivity. For example, you need to have a certain level of technique in a building to put it in a position to provide all these services. And that is our duty as owner of the building to procure that it is up to date. And sustainability is also very important. Sustainability will be one of the hot topics in the future, and employers will have to prove that they are a sustainable company and that their assets they are using are sustainable too. And we as an owner have to provide all relevant data and all relevant measurements to be able to have a sustainable office building.
But it doesn't all sound to me as, you know, making the job of the asset manager less complex and easier. So and how do you do how do you provide better services closer to the tenant, environmental conscious, flexible, 24/7, etc., and still kind of reducing or at least keeping your stuff and then grow the assets? So that's for me really squaring the circle. So how do you plan to do this?
Well, I mean, it's also for us, really, it's a rethinking. I mean, the times that we just rent out brick and mortar are gone. In the future, we are renting out experience. For our tenants, it's technology is of course the base basically to get a lot of services. But the concept behind is really that you enter a building, you have an appealing lobby that you go through to get to your office space. So you have additional services in the building. So it's all about creating that experience for people who work there, because a lot of our tenants actually, they have a challenge to attract talent. Now, attracting talent going forward will have different requirements than it had in the past. So we have to have a way more holistic concept here. So what we can provide as a full solution to our tenants, and again, that goes way beyond brick and mortar. Brick and mortar is the base that we need. Obviously, we need physical space, but the way how we experience, the way how we work there, the way how we share this, that's going to be different. And for us as well, for me and my colleagues, of course, it's a total new way of thinking, because it's not just a space, it's what we create as an ambience, as an environment, and as a total experience.
Do you think that's a consent in the industry? Because I can imagine having a fifth person sitting here saying, guys, you're insane. You know, I'm doing infrastructure and whatever. You know, I have a 20 years investment cycle. I'm happy with 2.5% without any efforts. I can do $1 trillion under management with 2 people. That could just in theory could be a concept.
I totally agree with my colleagues here, with Andreas and the colleague from the other 2 companies. Why? I just toured Washington DC, where we have a fantastic asset, and fully rented. However, my asset managers say, and it seemed really, I heard that all over, that nowadays the tenants and actually a potential buyer wants to see a gym. They all need a gym. They love to have a rooftop to be used for the tenants. And other than like 10 years ago when we acquired that asset in Washington DC, now we have to do these investments. With regards to the costs, we can then secure higher rents. And that's the point. It has to be a payoff between higher rents and the demands. But the demand is there, and as well with sustainability, people and tenants as well as potential buyers later want to see that, and therefore you have to do the investments, and we believe they're going to pay off in the end, because you do get the new tenants and you do get these investment refunded. If you look especially in the Facebook tower we have in Austin, Texas, we have all these in there, good restaurants, that's what they need. Otherwise Facebook wouldn't have gone there.
Okay, and Michael, what's your view on that? I mean, if you always mention Facebook, etc., I mean, this is single tenant or mainly taken by one tenant, and they do a lot internally. But I think the majority of buildings probably is still multi-tenanted. And how do you provide this kind of experience to a mixed-use crowd?
The Washington DC asset is multi-tenanted.
Good. And you mentioned that you have to invest there, so it would be also a question if you see the same trend of higher demand in retrofitting and further developing the existing assets.
Yes, but it's more, as you said, and we have to have a holistic view. Investor side, also the provider side, and also the tenant side and the employees from the tenants, and it's to say as a whole, and we have to give the right infrastructure, the demands to fulfill the demands. Maybe a gym or other things, but we have to be very near. Our asset managers have to be very near at the properties and very near know their client, their tenants, and the needs of the demands of the employees of them. That's the same from a single tenant building as to a multi-tenant building. And that's key. That's key for the building, and that's a unique selling point then, and the decision point for corporates, single tenant to multi-tenant to come into to become a tenant in our properties. So I'm fully convinced that is key, and that's the future for asset management.
And is that reflected in your budgets as well, so that you have higher TIs, higher kind of refurb costs, creating rooftop terraces, creating gyms, etc., or is that still, within the regular maths of asset management of properties?
I mean, I would say we have a huge portfolio, and you have to answer that question by each individual asset. Obviously, if you have a well-performing single-tenant asset with a 10-year lease contract and your tenant doesn't complain, there is no need to approach them and say, okay, I want to build a gym or a rooftop for you. If you have an asset which needs to be repositioned, obviously then you have a budget for that, and you need to what we always say, even if we buy new buildings, our ambition is to create a building which will be successful for the next 50 years, and that's the same with tenant improvement. So you need to understand what's the demand today, what's the demand in 3, 5, 10 years, and I think that's our duty. That's also sustainability. I read, I don't know whether that's true, but it sounded true to me that 40% of refurbishment budgets are spent on assets which had been refurbished throughout the last 3 years, just because people don't understand what is the right lighting, what is the right way, the walkway, how many meeting rooms do you need, how many single offices do you need, what's about the air, and so on and so on. We have so many people who enter our buildings and who start to renovate without really making up their mind what is the flexibility, what is the connectivity, what does the user, what does the client want. And that is our responsibility, and if we see that there is need, then we have the budget to do that, obviously. And we do that to create value for our investors. Every euro we spend needs to show up in our balance sheet, obviously. You don't spend a euro if you don't have a euro afterwards, obviously.
But isn't it hard to predict? You know, you mentioned this. We buy a property for the next, was it 50 or 15 years? 50 for the next 50 years. So I would struggle to predict what are the requirements in 250. I mean, how do you do this? Do you have a glass ball and predict it, or?
Well, glass ball always helps if you can read it, right? No. But of course, no. I mean, the idea behind is, of course, we all try to have a long-term view on the asset, and of course, talking about budgets. Yes, we do create the budgets that we think are necessary to maintain the long-term value of our assets. And nowadays, again, as we do see that our tenant needs are increasing, so of course we create the budget that we need to create those amenities that our tenants want. Because at the end of the day, so in order to maintain long-term value, we are in a lot of our buildings, we are collecting premium rents. Now, in order to be able to do that as well in the future, of course we have to really think about how we do make the right investments into the buildings. I think that's very important. It is not tick the box. If you do tick the box, your tenants might, for a short period of time, say, oh yeah, well, that's nice. No, it's about making the impact and doing the right thing. And we do spend a lot of time actually on that, trying to figure out for each individual asset, what is the right thing here. If we make that decision, then we create the budget, what does it take to get there? And so far, we've been very successful with it.
Which brings me to the question now of volume of this kind of. You mentioned there's of course still assets in your portfolio on a 10 years lease. People are happy, secondary city, so why do you do all that buzz? And then there's the others, you know, where you attract Facebooks and the Microsofts or whoever of the world. And then where do you see your portfolio developing to? So will it be really predominantly be serving these global high demand people, or will that always be a good balance? And for today, let's say, what is the percentage of this already kind of new generation of flex offices as compared to the traditional ones? And what would be your target, so your perspective for the new ones? And by the way, I would open this discussion to the audience as well. So if there's any one of you having a question, please raise your hands and then we'll come to you. But perhaps, Christoph, if you just...
Sure. Again, it depends. In a portfolio of 60 billion, you really have to decide what to do with what asset. And I love to give examples. The other example, we just secured an asset in Boston. It's a lovely asset. It's a historical building in the CBD, close to South Station. We could invest plenty. We could have all the ceilings taken out and the wooden ceilings to be seen, to have a fantastic new entrance. Honestly, me personally, I would love to have that a diamond in the city of the CBD of Boston. Now there's a budget, and then there's the goal of the fund. It's a value-add fund that should deliver a double digit, and to deliver a double digit for that asset, we can't do all the things I would love to do. So it's again something you have to see what you receive for doing what effort, and so it depends. It really depends. There are assets in Switzerland where we don't need to invest at all. There are other assets where you have to really, here in Munich we do have an entire block next to the central station which we bought from the Post Bank, and we're going to destroy totally and restructure an entire new building there. So it's from development just to refurbishment and just up to painting or introducing some of these.
Well, you mentioned that you're a lawyer, so it depends is a typical lawyer answer. Perhaps one of you guys could be a bit more precise in terms of prediction where the trend is going. where the trend is going. Do you see kind of more like a balanced demand and say, okay, that will not change significantly from today, where you have a couple of trophy assets and then you have the rest of the other, or do we see a general trend into this kind of more demanding office user? You know, people also in B cities want to move into this attractive properties, etc.
I mean, that's exactly the right approach. Let's think about the client and let's not do what we think the client wants, but let's talk to the client and let's understand his demand. And then if you have, for example, governmental authority, they like 20-year lease contracts, they need to reduce costs, they say the best thing for our employees is that they become Beamter, you don't need to do more for them, so give me a square room, I put in some desks and some chairs and that's it. And that for us is a very stable and secure inflow and income, so we will always have a percentage of long-lasting lease contracts of tenants who need space and who don't want to have fancy rooms. Not everyone needs to have fancy rooms to attract personnel, and so it's a client thing. We want to have a good mixture between long-lasting cash flows and flexibility, because Berlin, for example, is such a brutal example. We have locked in lease contracts in 2014 for 18 euros per square meter. If we hadn't locked in a 10-year lease contract, we'd be at 35 euros per square meter now, and that's a huge impact. I know you can have it vice versa too, so if you have more flexibility in your portfolio, you have more downside potential as well. So it needs to be the mixture. Even in a building, you can have flexible spaces and longer let spaces. And if you see WeWork, for example, many tenants think it's very attractive to have at least 1, 2, 3 floors of WeWork in there, because the perception of the building is, that seems to be a cool building because WeWork took in, or you can have it design office or spaces or name it. Doesn't need to be WeWork. So it's a good advertisement for your asset of a cool company, a cool co-working company says, I want to have some floors there. So yes, I'm also a lawyer, so sorry for that. So I would say, Christoph said it depends. Ask the client.
Good.
For me, not being a lawyer, still a long time in real estate. Now, I heard a very good word here, so I think it's about the right mix. Now, for our traditional corporate tenants, big users, they still, for the core business, I think will go for long-term leases. So we will still see those long-term cash flows for that. Now, on the side, I think the part of more flexible spaces, shorter-term options, I think that will increase, but it will not take over the majority. It's not like, in terms of disruption, it's not like all the big tenants will ask for 1-year leases in the future. Because if you operate a big business, talking to the client's perspective, you cannot change your offices like every year. It's just too much work involved there. So also the big companies, they are looking for certain stability for the majority of their space. And again, then we will see more offers than on the side, either if we offer it on our own, basically to our tenants as a temp space, or as a co-working concept, or if we find cool companies as operators to join us in buildings, to take up some of the space also in a long-term lease, but offering short-term solution to our tenants. So again, I think it's about the right mix. I don't think that the general business will totally change in that regard, that we won't see long-term leases and cash flows anymore.
Swiss perspective here?
I would fully agree to this, and add again, I think on the space side, the trend is very clear to have as a single tenant for the corporates and for the co-working too. We need more open spaces, the flexibility inside for the tenant inside their contract. So the flexibility is key there. And perhaps, as we talked about it, to have a part like WeWork, a co-working space, some stores here inside our properties that fits for the corporate tenants too.
Maybe I can just add something. What we say is we should stop to bring digitization in our buildings, but we should start to bring our buildings in the digitized world. We should stop to just think individual assets, and that will be an aspect. I mean, why do you every building we have in Frankfurt is built the same, has the same infrastructure, and there's not really a lot of use for that. It would be a lot more efficient to share particular areas together and to be more efficient, to be more flexible, and that is the way we need to go, and we need to prepare our buildings for that, because I'm very sure that we're talking about autonomous driving in the future. There will be cars where we just step in and they will bring us from one place to another, and mobility is the only purpose there. It's not, is it a BMW or a Mercedes? It's just to be able to move fast and efficient from one way to another. And buildings will have buildings as a service, real estate as a service means we have to open our buildings, because that is what sustainability also is about. It is efficiency, it is sharing, and we will try to do that, and that has a lot to do. Is it a single tenant asset for, I don't know, ECB, for example, will always tell us we need our security, we need our single asset, I don't want anyone in here, I don't want to share anything. But there will be a lot of other companies who say, I love to share because my employees want to collaborate, they want other people around, and we want meeting areas where other people can also be, because it is a lot cheaper and a lot more efficient. We will have to prepare for that.
So I think that's a good final statement here. Thank you for participating. My learnings are, for asset managers nowadays, it's not enough to take care of brick and mortar only. So you have to go deeper, you have to go closer to your tenant. But there's, as people are different, tenants are different, there's no one solution fits all. So you have to be very specific in what you deliver. So thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for listening. And please stay here for the next round of the Real Estate Innovation Forum Battlefield. Thank you.